Hi, I'm Jess, the founder of Positive HR.
And I'm Mikey, co-host of the Leadr Lab podcast, where we speak with leaders to learn about what inspires them to help you on your leadership journey.
Together, we'll explore the hearts and minds of leaders. We blend curiosity with insight as we learn firsthand what it takes to be a leader who truly inspires and drives positive change.
Join us as we dive deep into the art and science of human-centered leadership. Welcome to the Leadr Lab. Hi and welcome to the Leadr Lab. My name's Mikey Ellis and I'm really excited to bring this episode with Lance Picioane to you. Lance is the CEO and founder of Never Alone Foundation, alongside being the founder and managing director of his new company called Wellbe Health. Lance still prioritises his most important leadership role as being a father to his 3 boys. Lance is a former AFL player of 8 years, and he also lived with mental illness since he was 12 years old. Lance lives by the mantra, you find the brightest of lights from the darkest of places, and we talk a little bit about that experience he had in this episode. We talk about loneliness and what it means to be present and the power of listening and how it can actually save lives. We talk about the role of a leader and some key characteristics and key skills that a leader might cultivate, and practices such as vulnerability and identifying and celebrating a diversity of strengths within your team. A content notice for this episode, we do talk about mental health and suicide. This was a really powerful conversation with Lance. I took plenty of notes and I'm sure you will too. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Lance just as much as I did. Introducing Lance Picioane.
Lance, what's been the highlight of your day so far?
Oh, Mikey, every day is a highlight of my day. I have many more, but it's more about the waking up of my 5-month-old boy. You know, this morning he woke up at 6 o'clock and he comes straight into the wife, or I get him, and the first cuddle in bed is always a nice one, so it's always a good way to wake up. Beautiful. And meeting you. Yeah.
Oh, it's a tough act to follow, having cuddles with a 5-month-old. So I'm happy to hear that. It's a great way to start the day. Lance, I'd really love for you to share a little bit about what's really lighting you up at the moment with the work that you're doing, and perhaps a little bit of context as to how we
got there. Yeah, so. Like every day is a challenge, right? So in the work that I'm in, so mental health and suicide prevention is always a challenging space to understand and to be able to facilitate that impact. It's but you know we deliver a whole heap of programs through to different organisations, you know, from schools to sports clubs to corporate, whatever it is, just helping people understand the sort of more from health promotion and prevention components to. So that, you know, when just sort of shit doesn't hit the fan, hopefully, but we know that it does. But, you know, putting those behaviours in place for people, you know, even the young kids coming through to help those conversations, help them understand their accountability to their life is, you know, the sort of what they need to do. And we concentrate more through those behaviours as opposed to the outcome of something, which, it's really hard sort of process to work through, in human connection and being able to understand the support systems that we've got around us. But we do see a lot of impact being able to have, from all generations to understand the conversations that we have together, and the work that we were able to do together is working. But, you know, the space is a really tricky one because still people have a lack of education and awareness or understanding around what it is as opposed to playing the victim, which, you know, is a challenging conversation to have with people. I got into it through my own experiences. Like everybody has a story to tell. Had their own experiences with a level of mental health diagnosis. I was bullied at school from a young age. I was the big Eastern European kid. I was the size of an adult when I was 12 years of age. So those sorts of experiences through that, and then through anxiety. And you're talking 30 years ago, right? So the conversation around this or understanding wasn't that. So anxiety sort of went through that sort of process, and then, but allowing myself to be who I wanted to be, when that was the only place I found that was on the sports field. So we're all good on the sports field or on a basketball court, whatever it was, but to then leave that and then you're faced with reality again. Working through that, Depression, alcohol, drugs, the whole thing of life where I was at. And this is sort of 17, 18-year experience that I got through before I actually finally got help. So I got into it from my own lived experience. We find your passion in why you do things, and working through that. And then I thought there was more to my life when I was doing it at the time, and I thought, well, let's start something that is not really been done. And this is all started in 2013 as Love Me Love You originally, and now we are now the Never Alone Foundation. To 2013, a lot of people say, "What are you doing? Why?" And you open that conversation, and it's really interesting to see how many more people you open the conversation to people and they share back. So you're giving them access to normalise that conversation. So, and that's what it's what we keep doing, and this is what we're about.
Lance, there's so much I want to explore or chat about further with what you've just shared. And we'll come to the Love Me, Love You approach. I want to understand loneliness more, and it's such a common antecedent. It's one of those things that is the sort of catalyst for so many other challenges. So we'll talk about that in a moment. But the stats aren't great when it comes to incidences of mental health and suicide, and they're trending worse, and they have been for a long time. So it is a massive issue, and obviously it was has been a big issue for a long time since you were really focusing on making a change in 2013. But I'm curious as to your approach and trying to normalise having conversations. Because that wasn't the opportunity that you had back in the day. There might have been some resources or some support you could access, but it wasn't. We wouldn't probably be sitting here having a conversation about this in the context of leadership. We probably wouldn't be talking about mental health and suicide prevention explicitly in the way in which we are now. So, why is talking about it so important for you?
I think it's
and the work you do.
Talking about it's hugely important because it creates a connection to people, right? So when you talked about loneliness, and I'll touch on that as well with it, is the understanding that when you're going through something, whether it's just a stressful situation, just a standard everyday stressful situation, you think you're the only person that's ever been through it, or you're going through it. But then culturally we're led to believe that you've got to, because the Aussie way is that you need to suck it up and you get through it and you just work on it, right? So instead of doing that and allowing, okay, I'm just going to do it, because if you keep giving yourself the same answers, we'll say that cyclical behaviour becomes a quite dizzy space for yourself, and then you don't actually, able to work through it because you just don't know. Right, so your thought process is hindered in a way because you're not actually seeing a clearer picture of what could be done or what you've done before, even. So the big part we do here is understanding, life promotion. So take away mental health, take away suicide prevention as a topic or a concept. We'll talk about life promotion, right? So what are the well-being sort of factors that you put into your life every single day, and creating that consistent routine and practice over a period of time, not just something that you've done and that's it, because I'm out of it and I'm fixed. It's not how it works. So, but the more sort of things that we do around our well-being with others, the bigger impact that it has. And they don't have to be big things that we're doing with each other. Okay, so it's just the little things. It's the time, it's the presence, it's the engagement of actually being here, both through body and spirit, to be, okay, I'm here with you at the time. And I've learned this a lot more, even so, actually since being a father. Right? So I've got 3 boys. I've got a 9-year-old, nearly 9-year-old, a 6.5-year-old, and a 5-month-old. And just the factor of being present with them helps me understand, okay, the work that we're doing in the space around a mental health suicide prevention is understanding the presence of mind and presence of being with somebody is the most positive and powerful impact that you can have. not sort of being distracted by your phone all the time, or not being distracted by all the other noises, or watching the TVs, all those sorts of things. Literally, the time is the most precious gift you can give anybody. And being able to relay that into yourself as well. So the values and the behaviours that you work through that is being able to say, okay, we're actually really good at helping other people when it's on our terms. Yeah. And the challenge that we have there is that when actually it hits the fan for other people, a lot of people feel scared and afraid of, okay, can I sit with that person for a time? You know, can I sit with them for 5 minutes? Can I give them that time of presence? Because I'm actually concerned about then my own health. Yeah, I understand that, and that's human nature, and that's how we go about things. But just being present with people in terms of in creating a space for people to have these types of conversations. But the more we can normalise the conversations before shit hits the fan, for a lot of people, as opposed to that allows that empathetic process for people to be able to connect to their feelings and emotions and their experiences. But if we're not giving people the space, what they reach out for is that sort of sympathy, right? So there's a big conversation between sympathy and empathy, because the instant gratification you get from sympathy makes you feel good in the moment, makes you feel better in the moment, not good, better in the moment, as opposed to actually what am I understanding of my experience right here? Then how are the behaviours that I need to actually get through with this, and who can I do that with? So you create connection through conversation. You know, we have a big one that we've sort of worked with a while. One conversation can save a life. But don't wait for that invite to be that conversation. We're having these conversations all the time. So either there's someone we don't know or someone that we're really trusted and connected with, that, you know, we're having a much more positive impact moving forward for everybody. Gotcha.
trying to rein this in to focus on what's going to be most helpful, because there's just so much here. And I you know, the stats would suggest that, you know, 1 in 5 people are going to experience a mental health diagnosable mental health condition at some stage in their life. So there's going to be people listening to this who are in that situation, who are struggling with their mental health, and there's going to be people who are working with others who are experiencing that, whether they're aware of it or not. So I'm curious with the work that you do in organisations, in companies, somebody who is experiencing mental health issues, challenges, concerns, ill health. How do you show up at work, and with the stigma that is still there, to varying degrees, and I think the conversations that we're having, the awareness around this is changing that. It's normalising the fact that this is a very normal experience to have. However, there are people who are reluctant to, you know, acknowledge their health issues, and there are leaders who are working with others who may have diagnosed or undisclosed or undiagnosed mental health concerns. Like, how do we approach this?
Well, this is a big cultural issue, right? So in terms of the work that you do in an environment like a workspace, as you said, you don't know who's going through what, as opposed to actually defining someone's experiences through their mental health diagnosis or their challenges through there. A lot of people are actually having negative impacts through their mental health experiences every single day due to the pressures, expectations and stress that they're putting through, whether it be from the workspace, you know, some things that are out of their control. But it's also about how people are actually taking accountability for their experiences. Yeah. So when I say that, is about that people are really quick to jump on if something's gone wrong, that they've got a mental health challenge or a mental health diagnosis. They're really quick to jump on it, which is actually creating a sort of negative culture in how we experience, and the real people that are actually sort of being clinically diagnosed with these mental health diagnoses. So in terms of being able to, it's not about having the conversation about mental health for people, it's about just having conversations about who they are and how they're going about things. So we try and create a conversation, as I said, normalising the process around life promotion, okay, because that's what it's all about, that we can actually get to a point where, okay, if someone is, so for me recently, 6 months ago, I was diagnosed with ADHD. for which was supposed to be diagnosed when I was a kid. So me experiencing that, but it's then, okay, do I expect other people to change their way of dealing with me because of my diagnosis and the things that I've been through? Or is it, how do I have to change my approach in how I've gone about things? And how do I go about things? So not playing the victim in the space and saying, okay, I'm here, I'm for work, or I'm for my family, or for wherever I am in whatever domain I'm at in my life, that I'm here and I'm taking the responsibility and taking the accountability for actually this is the process that I need to work through. So if people want to go down the space and say, oh, okay, I can't do that because I have a mental health diagnosis, or somebody is a leader might be scared to actually afraid to say so somebody to have those types of conversations or a hard conversation with someone because their work performance is off. Understand, okay, this is just everybody. If we made it easier, let's just put everyone that has a mental health diagnosis and we'll just have be able to have the same conversations with everybody. That'd be a whole lot easier, right? But that's not the case. Every individual is different in how they approach life and how they approach things. But it's when I say it's what you do off court is actually creates that performance on court. So when I say off court, it's about what you do away from the workplace in terms of your well-being every single day, and sort of instilling the behaviours and the outcomes for yourself in here, and making sure that when you come to work that you're in a better space to be able to promote yourself to move forward in every single day. So if we're so concerned on the outcomes of life that we forget about the behaviours that we need to instill in how we go about things. The generations are different in how they interpret their experience as well. Okay, so lived experience is everyone has lived experience to a point of where they're at in their life, right? So it's been able to understand the role that plays in making sure that I can actually work my way forward. For a leader to be able to actually share your own experiences actually creates, when I talked about the connection part before, it actually being able to understand the empathy process in sharing your own experience to make sure that those people that are, and in levels below, in whatever organisation you're at, to be able to say, okay, I feel safe enough to be able to have this conversation here. But if you're not creating that safe culture, because where we feel safest is where we perform best. So if we're creating a culture within whatever organisation you're at to create a safe environment for people to be able to share, to experience, to actually be able to say at that current time, I'm not having a bad day. It's not how it works. I'm having a poor moment. Okay, so these are the experiences I'm dealing with right now. How do I actually express that? Who can I trust that conversation with? But we should be able to have that trusting conversation with everybody that's around us, but not to play the victim in that space, but to actually use it as a powerful, a strong conversation to say, okay, I might need 5 minutes out here, or I might need 10 minutes out here to be able to move forward with it.
Yeah. What's the role of what do you see as the role of a leader, or what can a leader in an organisation or a team do to cultivate that safety, whereby everybody feels safe to acknowledge their whether it be their neurodiversity or whether it be their current health, mental health, physical, whatever their experience is. Everybody should feel safe enough to be able to disclose that to the point at which they feel comfortable, and in a way that's relevant to the work that they're doing. But I imagine a lot of people don't feel comfortable or safe doing that for fear of being judged or discriminated against. So what's the role of a leader in an organisation?
I think it's everybody's different in how they work it. Right? Everybody has different types of leadership styles and their experience and what they've done through. So, but you sort of, it's being able to sort of blend your own experiences in with the people in terms of what your leadership, what you want it to look like. So what would you expect? So, and I say this in the nicest way possible. What I would expect from my people is what I would expect if they were my leader. Yeah. So in terms of how I instill those behaviours, but sharing the vulnerability, sharing the vulnerability in a way that says, okay, I'm not superhuman here. We instill this picture of a leader that they're superhuman, they're invincible, they know everything, and that's what it is. And that's how I go about it. But the leadership style doesn't actually portray that to the people below. in terms of the experience. So people don't feel trusting of that leadership. So in terms of being able to share the vulnerability of your experiences, I believe in saying, okay, this is that conversation piece we talked about before, is people going, okay, this is something we may have faced similar. So it's not the same experience. We're saying something, faced this similar experience. These are the certain things that we've done to overcome this or work our way through this. What do you think? Actually putting it back to the people, I think, is the biggest sort of, for me, my leadership style is putting that back to the people. What do you think? Actually making sure people are feeling heard in the experience, not just saying, okay, this is what we're going to do and this is how you're going to go about it. Actually, what do you think? How do you think you could do this better? Or how do you think we could do this differently? Okay, so what's the outcome? So what's the features and benefits, and how do we create that outcome? But don't control the outcome, because you can't, because that's in the future. But we're controlling the behaviours around that process to create a more safer environment. By generally just having a form of simple connection, we can create those behaviours that are actually more impacting, because even from working the footy days, it's about, there's leaders that are going to do this thing, but everybody had a different leadership style, right, and how they did it. There's the doers and there's the talkers. So there's certain people, how they go about it, so they can lead the way in terms of their behaviour and how they work their work ethic and process, and actually the time they put in. Or there's ones that actually generally are not so good in terms of their ability, but they're actually really good in terms of motivating and having these conversations and being able to debrief conversations and actually filter it to move forward with. So everyone has a role to play, but everyone's a leader, because you are your own business in whatever life you're in, right? So you are your own, and I say that nicely, right? So your most important investment is yourself. So how do you actually create that leadership within you, but how do you blend the experiences together to make sure that the impact is where we want to go moving forward? Things aren't always going to work out, and majority of the time they don't work out what you picture them to be, because that then, if your expectations that everything's going to be hunky-dory all the time, then you've already lost. And understanding how that works. So your expectations of what yourself in terms of behaviours you can put through to yourself, whether you're a leader, whether you're an individual that's being led, but understanding that we all play that role together, and the more connection and bond and trusting process you can create with your people. And one of my greatest mentors is a bloke called Mike Schneider, who's the MD from Bunnings, right? Used to be the chairman of our board at Never Alone. He's the leader of this organisation, which is 60,000 people. But he goes, it's not about me instilling the leadership to 60,000 people. I have my team around me that I need to instill the behaviours on, and then they work that through. So how do you replicate the behaviours, working that through to make sure that the person that is at the bottom of the food chain, making sure that they feel like they're the most important person in the room. If we can make sure that people feel like, every individual feels like they're the most important person in the room, in the nicest way possible, without their agenda getting in the way, that they're all actually going to benefit from it.
I'm trying to take some notes here to capture what you're sharing, because there's so many great examples of what good leadership looks like in what you've shared, and I just want to recap on a couple of them. The first thing is the leader demonstrating vulnerability through being vulnerable and acknowledging that they don't have all the answers. I think that is very important for building trust in a leader, because we can relate to somebody who's like, hey, listen, I've got some experience, but I don't know all the answers here. And then asking for some input. And thereby empowering the people that are in that team. That empowerment and agency is really, really important as well, because then you're not coveting and controlling this power of that sometimes comes from being a leader. You're using it to empower others, and I think that's the kind of leader people want to follow.
I think you'd hope that everyone has that understanding, whether it be a leader or non leader. So, but sort of putting that empowerment to people, because we're all good at different things. We're all our skill set allows us to do different things better. My way of life and how I go about things. I know my challenges and I know my strengths, but a lot of people are sort of take that accountability or actually accountable to themselves with what they understand who they are and how they go about it. So it's really sort of, but you feel a lot of people in leadership roles also feel threatened by people under them because they think, well, if I give them too much power, they're going to take my role. Yeah. And that's the way, that's the normal human nature we go about things because, but we're actually sort of, we talk about, the rising of the tide. It's just actually bringing up all of the ships as opposed to, okay, just let's get one up. Because that might be feeling of that instant gratification that we're all seeking always. This is the new way of the world and, we need that now and that's how I'm going to feel good about myself. But if we're actually, it's not sustainable. So sustainable leadership. So there's a difference between leadership and sustainable leadership. So leadership in terms of actually the experience at the time, or actually sustainable leadership is, okay, how do we create that journey to make sure that we're leading in and benefiting moving forward together?
Yeah, and not just bringing others along on your journey, but empowering them to come to. The other thing you mentioned too, which I think is worth touching on, is understanding your individual strengths as a leader. You also mentioned that everybody is a leader, and I want to reinforce that point as well. Just because you have a title doesn't mean to say that you are a leader or necessarily a good one. And everybody is a leader through the example that they set of their behaviour. And so understanding your strengths and your weaknesses, but really doubling down on your own.
Well, this is the thing, and I'll pull you up on it, Mikey. So is we don't have weaknesses, we have challenges. Yeah. So as soon as you start saying weakness, it's about, okay, well, that's just something I'm not good at and I'm not going to worry about it anymore. Okay. These are challenges that I need to work through. Okay. So, and I always talk about that, every challenge is an opportunity to shine. So let's work through that. So not just deflect and say, okay, well, I'm not good at it and I'm not going to do it. So, pulling that sort of conversation to people and helping them understand, okay, that you might not be the best at it, but you can still do it. But it just might be limited in your ability to execute it, and that's fine. But that sort of creates that sort of team environment process to say, okay. And I keep bringing it back to footy, and I do a lot of stuff with understanding around footy. There's 22 players on a team. There's 4 on the bench. Everyone plays their role. Not everyone's a captain. Not everyone's a full forward. And this is the thing that we need to work through, is that every time that you have the ball or you can create an impact, you're actually leading the team through that impact. So and that's the behaviour that we need to come back through. So understanding the different challenges and strengths that we all work through, but how do you blend them into a framework? Yeah. So, and this is the thing, right? So people are your framework, and then how do you instill those behaviours to make sure that your framework of your product works? The problem that you have is that, I see this, the Christmas lights, right? It only takes one broken light bulb for your whole Christmas lights not to work. So how do you actually empower each light bulb to be able to make sure that they're working together to pull that, to make sure that you can actually light up that tree?
Yeah, I really love that strengths-based approach and seeing what what I referred to as weaknesses and what we often do see within ourselves as weaknesses, and reframing that as challenges and opportunities to develop. I think that's a really great way to approach that and to help again empower everybody to cultivate more to identify and cultivate those strengths. And to bring them to the team, because everybody's going to have a different strengths that they do bring, and the more we enable and empower everybody to do that, the greater diversity we're going to have of strengths and of experience, which is only going to make a team stronger.
Yeah, most definitely. And you say that word, that beautiful word, enable, right? So, enabling people to be better. Also, a lot of people enable behaviours to actually be worse. Yeah, so not being able to, not calling out people for, they could have done something. They haven't done something wrong, because that's not their way. They're not their intent to do something wrong. But instead of enabling sort of people to keep going their behaviours to actually not be the benefit of the team, and then also the individual. Works the same way in terms of enabling something to do something better, yeah. But sort of those behaviours, as I said, kind of bring it back to what I've said at the very start about me being a parent. And this is the greatest leadership and I think the greatest leadership role that I have in my life is being a father, and being a husband to my beautiful wife, is around the fact that being present in your experiences, because if we're not present in those experiences and being able to actually sit back and understand what it is that's helping, because my 3 kids, even though my 5-month-old doesn't really have a behaviour at the moment, apart from waking up in the middle of the night, my two older boys, from the same factory, different products. There are ways of going about things, their social play, their social reads, their understandings, their empathy process. One's black and white, one's full of colour. But it's understanding how we actually can keep consistent in your language and your presence to actually create the similar experience for either child. So in terms of being able to take those behaviours through to the workplace, I think is a really sort of interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, I want to come back to that. You mentioned this earlier on about our presence being it's a strategy, but also just a way of being, which is so essential to being an effective leader. What does that mean for you? What do you mean by presence? And how do you personally cultivate greater capacity to be present? And what takes us out of that ability to be present?
Yeah, I think for me, about being present is actually in terms of mind and body, to be there in the experience at the time. And we always think about presence in terms of I have to be here forever, but it's not about being here forever. It's about here being in the experience at the time where you need to be. So, but being also, same thing I would say to my sons, there's certain times that I can't be with them at that moment because, I have to do, there's other things that in life that we're having to do. But being present is actually just being able to hear, not just listen. Yeah, it's actually hearing what's actually happening and taking it on board and actually processing all the things that are going on. Or actually being able to see the experience and the body reaction that people are getting from the smallest of things. Not waiting for the biggest of events to actually create presence and being here. Not allowing yourself to be distracted from the process. So we talk about trusting your process a lot and understanding what your process is. So me trusting my process is actually if I'm with my kids, I'm not on my phone. Or if I'm at work, I'm not actually waiting for an email to come through to have this conversation. So it's about actually being that sort of that full body presence, that we're sort of being able to sort of work through that. The way that I like to do it is, I look at my days, I reflect every single day. So before bed every night, I actually sort of do a little bit of a sort of accountability score through all my behaviours and how I've gone about things. And do I get it right every single day? No, I don't. Am I 10 out of 10 every single day? No, I'm not. But I'm human and I work through that, but I acknowledge it and I could do this better. Right, I've done that really well. That's cool. Awesome. But I expect that. Yeah, for me, I expect that process there. But what could I have done better here? And it changes every day. And sort of being able to create that experience within ourselves. If we create that experience here within ourselves through, family, work, social, wherever you are, what's your expectation of that? So my expectations of where I'm going about things used to be about everybody else. And that sort of wasn't sustainable. But being present in my experience is what I read right here. And, sitting across from you, Mikey, I'm not thinking about what I've got to do this afternoon. I'm actually thinking about what the conversation here, and actually then it's helping me reflect on the conversations that I've had with my son this morning about, some experiences that he's going through at school. It's just being present for that sort of those moments, allowing that process to work for you.
You can really tell when somebody's present with you, and you can tell when somebody's listening. Yeah, actually, yeah. and not just listening, waiting to respond, or listening, kind of taking it on board, and as you say, thinking about what's happened this morning or later on today. So yeah, I want to just acknowledge that and thank you for sharing that as a practice and for being so present. Just briefly, and you don't have to go into this in too much detail, but I know that a lot of what you're talking about and what you share with other groups, whether it be schools or sporting groups or companies, is learned through experience and through not having been as present or as a greater leader as you have become. Can you tell us about what was the catalyst, or what was the turning point? What changed for you?
What changed for me? Well, I have this saying in my life that you find the brightest of lights from the darkest of places. Yeah. So the catalyst for me was changing of my life. Really, it was that my last suicide attempt. And that was, and as deep and dark as you want to go with all that sort of experiences, which I know a lot of people go through on a daily basis, is that was my moment of understanding what's my why, what's my reason of life, what's my why, and my why's always been family, and my mum is the most beautiful, amazing person, and we speak every day, and we're sort of that through. My wife is the most empathetic, caring person in the world, and being able to, for me, it's actually seeing what those moments were at that time, but the experience that I have with my mum and my wife, to be able to take those sort of behaviours and the way that they go about their values of life to create, or for me, it looks like my leadership. And this is how I like to go about things, and I'm, as I said, empathetic and empowering and all those sorts of things as much as I possibly can. I don't get it right all the time. It's being understanding that, because we don't get it right all the time, but allowing yourself to say, okay, well, I'm not right here. Right? And for me, that leadership component for me is I need to instill these behaviours into myself first. And as I said, from that darkest of moment, has actually created my future moving forward. But really understanding that we're not here to do life by ourselves, and that we need people to walk our path with us. And the more that we can have, in the more trusting and stronger connections we can have with our people that walk our path with us, the more beneficial it's going to be in the end. I still, even to today, the experiences that we've gone through, through COVID, post-COVID, all these experiences, even right up to today, it's allowing ourselves to have people walk the journey with us, because the hardest thing to do in life is to do something by yourself, but sort of making sure that we can allow ourselves to be a part of that journey.
Again, there's so much I want to explore here. Walking being one thing.
Ooh,
I won't get started on that, because I know that's a whole nother
sore point.
That's a whole nother strategy that you've really used to help yourself. Never alone. The foundation and the intention really being to address loneliness. Just wanted to flag as well. But I think there's a really unique opportunity here that we have for you to share what it might be like, or what it was like for you, for anybody who's listening who either finds themselves, has found themselves, or is concerned about finding themselves in a really dark place, where you feel like you are alone. And despite the fact you might have people who are around you who really care, or a family that you love and are devoted to, there's a unique experience of that you have when you are contemplating or attempting to take your own life. What advice would you have, or what could you share for anybody who might be in that place or concerned about trending towards being in that place? Yeah,
I think we pull it back, and we say that in the nicest way possible. We believe that every human has people that care for them, right? That's what life should be about. But we know that's not the case. I talk to a lot, and the experiences that when people are calling Lifeline, and a lot of these people are calling Lifeline, and that's a high percentage of people that are calling Lifeline is because they don't have anybody else to talk to. But if you're in that space, there only has to be a flicker of light. So when I say a flicker of light, it only has to be a person to be able to have that conversation with. But there's certain people where they're in that situation, they actually feel their most calmest because they've made a decision to actually to end their life. That's when the people feel calm. So because, and it comes back to when people are talking about, I never thought that person would have gone through it. They actually were behaving really good. They seemed happy. But when people are in that situation, the stressful bang, and then they jump off the cliff sort of thing in terms of their emotional acceptance of what they're going to go through. So there's not too many people experiencing that through that. It's just a trigger process. Up, done, I'll go today. If people are in that space, firstly, I feel for you. I feel you. I understand you. Being able to make sure that people feel acknowledged for that experience. That when people are in that space, you actually don't want to die. You just want to end their life that you're living right now, and then actually come back tomorrow. That's the process that I understood where I was at. So it's helping people understand. Okay, it's not look at the simplest of things, and I don't have to write a list of all the positives in my life, because usually some of those positives that I look at in my life are actually the things that are actually causing me to the issues, the challenges. So actually, I just need one thing. What is the one thing that I actually need to work through? What is the actually process that I need to work through from here? And I say this in the nicest way possible. You look in the mirror, that is your one thing. You are your one thing that needs to be a part of this life. It's all about us in terms of in the environment and the community that we're trying to create. And a community is about this multiple of people, and our multiple is just two. Actually, looking back at the person in the mirror creates a community. So creating a self-community understanding. So actually, how do you have those conversations to move forward? Someone said to me once before, nothing in life is that bad that you actually need to end your life. But it is. There's certain experiences that they're going through. So from trauma, abuse, whatever it might be in terms of people's lives, there are certain experiences that actually affect you so harshly and so devastating that you can't deal with the pain. The emotional pain is much worse than physical pain. So working through that, or there's certain experiences that we're going through, but understanding, okay, these are experiences that we've gone through and you are going through, but let's live on in spirit to make sure that you can actually show the world that you're the most important person in the world, and have that conversation with who you need to have it with, whether it be a lifeline or whether it be whoever it is, because one conversation can save a life. That's that flicker of light that you need. Yep.
Thank you for sharing that experience and what you've learned through that, and I'm really happy that you did share that, because sometimes we know these things, but we forget how simple it can be. And I'm not saying it's simple to make the experience any less complex than it actually is. But as you say, having a friend reach out, acknowledge that they're there, or for you as an individual experiencing an acute sort of moment like that, to find one thing to focus on, I think it's really helpful.
But as I said before, and I touched on it, is that let's normalise the process before it gets to that thing, right? So as opposed to waiting for an event to happen or to think about happening before we have these conversations about just life promotion, as opposed to suicide prevention, we can normalise it and create that culture and environment around it. We actually create a safer space for people to be able to that then when those situations will still happen and will still present themselves to many people in this world, that we actually know the framework or the foundations of support and well-being and process for people to say, okay, well, I'm here, but I know what I can do here, But instead of playing the victim in here and saying, okay, well, that's my life, and I'll finish. Actually, what I'm doing here is actually the sort of the early stages, the foundations, the framework of life is actually going to help sort of alleviate as many of those situations as possible.
That's a really nice way for us to head towards the last couple of questions. And you've mentioned this a few times now, life promotion.
Yeah.
What does that mean? And what do you do? So what are some of the things that you do that we might learn from? Let's say you're Professor, Lance, coming to do a guest class in the Leadr Lab.
Yeah.
If you were to take a class or teach a class, what would the lesson be that you'd love for people to learn?
Oh, there's so many lessons that could be put into it, but if I had to put it into a lesson, it's about actually finding what works for you. And as I said before, everybody's different. Everybody's impact's different in terms of what their behaviour works for them. So, I was heavily driven on exercise being my answer. And I was. And I trained before Darcy was born. I would train. I'd get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'd go to the gym. I'd do my meditation. I'd do my breath work. I'd train. I'd do all that sort of stuff. Have my saunas, and I'd walk in the door 6:45 before my sons might wake up, so I could have breakfast with them. And I really sort of jumped onto that, and I become sort of really obsessive compulsive on that process. That's just how my mind works. I understand relationships, the relationship that I had with training, and a physical way of thinking. Okay, that was my identity, and it's how I go about things. But it's about finding the balance, and balance is a beautiful word, and it's at the pot at the end of the rainbow, which we're never going to find, because as soon as you find your balance, you're actually unbalanced already. So working through that process. So for me, like alcohol for me is a no, is a big no. Like, it's just, I understand the experiences that I had with alcohol, and I understand the experiences people have with alcohol and how they go about things. Alcohol for me is a big no-no in terms of I understand just it can flicker off like that, and the choices and the decision becomes, in the process, just different. Walking is a good thing for me, and I bring it back to is the time and presence that I'm able to have with the people that I care for and they care for me. And I bring it back to family. So all the things that we do, from social well-being to physical to emotional to mental to, even occupational and financial well-being, it all comes back to the family experience for me, and being able to be there, a part of it. So working what's the little things that I can do for myself every single day to work through my process, and understanding the behaviours. I meditate, not as consistent as I'd like. But I still have those moments where I'm not sitting cross-legged and, fingers touching sort of thing, but I actually allow, when I say meditation for me, it's actually just being able to sort of quieten down, slow down my process to actually allow new thoughts to come in, as opposed to sort of creating the dizziness. So that works for me, sort of simple breathing techniques that I work through, so how do those sort of things work? You're not reinventing the wheel with me coming out and saying, hey, go for a half an hour walk every single day. It's not reinventing the wheel. People actually know what they can do for themselves, but they're actually really good at finding excuses why they shouldn't do it, as opposed to finding the reasons why they should do it. So there's a difference between reasons and excuses. For me, a reason why I'm not going to the gym as much is because with time is our worst. It can be our best precious gift, but it can be our worst enemy. Waking up at 4 a.m. thinking that my wife's going to say, go to the gym every morning, you'll be fine. But Darcy wakes up at 5 o'clock. It's not how it's going to work. So understanding the behaviours that I need to process myself through, but keeping myself accountable because to the relationships of what I have in each of those domains. But for me, as I said, my biggest thing that I don't appreciate, because it's about appreciation, is the alcohol component. And I know what it does to people, and I've had so many experiences with other people trying to support and help them to understand that this is their space. But if you actually saying, okay, well, that's my go-to, that's my medication, that's how I'm going to get through life, there's actually other things that are more positively impacting that you can do, as opposed to that.
Yep. No, I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that. Again, it comes back to some simple things, which are doable. So that's really helpful. What are you most looking forward to right now?
What am I looking? Well, we've just started a new company. So apart from the work at Never Alone Foundation, which is creating a sort of the collaborative platform to make sure that people in the mental health and suicide prevention space can do this together. And this is the idea from the foundation at the moment, working through that and seeing what impact that we can have in different spaces. We're launching a health tech company that is very exciting in what that looks like. It's sort of very innovative. Everyone's so innovative these days, but we're sort of creating more of a collaboration platform around this and making sure that, because I said, there's organisations, there's products and all the things that are doing amazing jobs and amazing work and how it is, but we're sort of just created a difference in the target market where we've gone about things. So we're looking forward to that. All developments all happening there. I've got I coach my son's under 10s football side, which I love. I genuinely love the experience of being able to help these kids work through the behaviours and experiences around what this beautiful game. It gave me so many opportunities in life. But one of the biggest experiences through that is just like I look forward to going home at the end of today, picking my kids up from school and hear their experience every single day. So that's what it is. And then I get to go cuddle my 5-month-old boy and make sure that he's all okay and my wife's had a good day without being too stressed. So life every day is an experience that I love. I'm very grateful for the opportunities that life presents me. Right from my footy days, which was an experience that nearly killed me, but it's also an experience that creates opportunities of life. So every day is an opportunity to shine. It's sort of constantly learning and growing from your experiences every single day. I get out of bed every single day with a smile on my face. Even though I've got a head that looks like it doesn't smile, it sort of work through that. But just my thing I'm excited about is just seeing my kids at the end of the day.
Beautiful. There's a lot to look forward to.
A lot to look forward to.
I've got one final question, Lance. Before I answer this, just want to acknowledge you and thank you for the way in which you've shared your experiences so candidly. I personally, I find that really, really helpful. I like to learn from people who have been through some stuff and can share their experience. And so, what would the conversation that would typically happen after we stop recording is for me to say, thanks so much. That was great. It was really, really relevant. I got a lot out of that. So I just want to acknowledge that publicly. That. And I know a lot of people are going to get a lot of value out of what it is that you've shared, and we'll share more about the work that you do. And I want to acknowledge that as well as a service for people who really need to know or to be reminded and to feel that they are never alone and that there is always somebody and something that they can turn to for support. The last question I have, I'd love just to sort of pay it forward or provide you the opportunity to pay it forward and acknowledge somebody who's had a really positive impact on you in your life. Who would that be?
Oh, geez. I think I mentioned the two people really big time, my wife and my mum. Big time in terms of, and it's not, we always sort of acknowledge people when they've been with us through success. Which is usually the way we think of people, but it's actually, and I say this, and I'll throw Dad in there as well. Even though my experiences in relationship with Dad growing up was quite a challenging one, but now it's. I say this to people all the time. My mum, my wife, and my dad all the time now is that we have our good times, we have our bad times, but we have the most important things. We have our times together. And that's really a big thing for me. And as I said before, the behaviours and the values that have been instilled into me, I'm 44 years of age and I'm still learning, I'm still growing. But the experience that I take from my wife and my mum in particular are the ways that I like to go move forward. So, they're the two people that really sort of dug in the trenches with me when I was in my recovery process and, even before that and going through all the hardship and the experiences there. A big sort of, I get a lot of really emotional when I talk about them. There's so much love and care that sort of helps me understand who I can be moving forward, and not limiting me because I don't like limitations. I don't like people putting expectations on me. They just care for who I am and how I go about things and allow me the freedom and the empowerment we talked about before to do what I need to do, which is create more opportunities for my life. So that's what it's about.
Beautiful. I'm going to confer upon you the title of honorary professor, Lance of the Leadr Lab. Thank you for joining us in this conversation, mate. It was powerful stuff. I really appreciate your time.
Appreciate your time. Thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Lance just as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. If you'd like to find out more information about the work Lance does, you can go to the Never Alone website. We have links to that and other social media accounts in the show notes. Thank you very much for joining us on the Leadr Lab podcast.
Thanks for joining us in the Leadr Lab. We hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as we did bringing it to you.
We have plenty of inspiring leaders and their stories to share. Ensure you don't miss these episodes by subscribing wherever you're listening to this. Links to today's guest are in the show notes, and you can find links to our socials there too.